Last week, ABC late-night host Jimmy Kimmel told a big lie on national television. He claimed that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated by a conservative MAGA supporter. That wasn't a bad joke, it was a deliberate attempt to cover for left-wing violence and deceive millions of people. After a campaign pressuring advertisers and affiliates, ABC suspended Kimmel, saying he wouldn't be immediately returned to air. Progressives screamed about cancel culture and circulated petitions, apparently more concerned about a millionaire losing his low-rated show than a murdered father. Then came the threats. Violent warnings poured into ABC affiliates, culminating in a leftist shooting up a station in Sacramento. Shortly afterward, ABC announced that Kimmel would return to air. The lesson for the left was very simple. Violence works. Terrorism works. When Donald Trump was shot on stage in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, the entire world held its collective breath. His supporters didn't flee. They froze, waiting to see if their leader had been killed. If the leftist assassin had succeeded, civil war was certainly on the table. Then Trump stood and raised a defiant fist, and the entire nation exhaled. Not only because the president had survived, but because the darkest path had been narrowly avoided. That moment should have been a turning point. Trump entered office with energy, issuing a flurry of executive orders, but he never confronted the left-wing groups and institutions that had normalized violence. He wanted a stable economy and secure borders, totally understandable, but left-wing radicals continued to act as if they had a special right to political violence. By letting them get away with an assassination attempt and terror in the streets, Trump had ensured that another wave was inevitable. After Kirk's assassination on September 10th, some progressives mouthed words about lowering the temperature, almost all of them hedged by smearing the victim or blaming both sides. Meanwhile, a disturbingly large faction openly celebrated the murder. Their message was clear. They would never abandon violence as long as it kept paying dividends. Even Kimmel's brief firing for telling a malicious lie that threatened ABC's broadcast license was more than they could tolerate. For perspective, when an unknown addict overdosed while in police custody, the left torched American cities for months. In contrast, a prominent conservative was assassinated, and the only cost extracted from the left was one failing talk show host and some TikTok blabbermouths losing their jobs. Even that tiny price triggered outrage. When FCC Chair Brendan Carr flagged Kimmel's violation, progressives shrieked about fascism and the end of free speech. The irony was grotesque. Kirk had just been killed for exercising his free speech. Meanwhile, major Democrats piled on. Ilhan Omar and AOC smeared Kirk's character before he was even buried. Keith Olbermann threatened to kill CNN commentator Scott Jennings before issuing some flimsy apology saying he didn't really mean it. Left-wing influencers rushed to declare allegiance to Antifa, a group with a long record of violence. Whatever pretense of unity had existed collapsed in less than 24 hours. Soon, threats flooded into ABC affiliates. One man, a former teachers union lawyer, even sprayed bullets into a station window. That was enough for Sinclair Media, ABC's largest affiliate group, to pull a planned Kirk tribute and restore late-night programming. ABC then confirmed that Kimmel himself would return to that time slot. Sadly, there's really no other way to say this. The terrorists won. Now, credit where it's due. After another wave of pressure, Sinclair and Nexstar, another major affiliate, refused to air Kimmel until he apologizes. Together, they represent about 70 of ABC's 250 affiliates, including major markets like Washington, D.C., Seattle, and Portland. That's significant, but it's not sufficient. Reports indicate that Kimmel could have resolved the issue early by simply apologizing, but he refused. He bet that his Hollywood allies and violent extremists would clear a path for his return. And he was right. Now, I didn't know this at the time when I was writing this piece, but I could have predicted it entirely. It turns out that right after Jimmy Kimmel went back on air, we had another terrorist attack. Another young, radicalized guy climbed onto a roof with a gun in Dallas, Texas, and fired bullets into an ICE detention facility. He intended to murder the ICE agents themselves, but managed to fire into a blacked-out van that happened to be holding a lot of detainees. So he only ended up wounding and killing the very people he thought he was coming to save. He ended up shooting himself at the end. Now, this is not one of those situations where the motive was super vague. The killer wrote that he was anti-ICE on the very ammunition he was firing at the agents. A lot of left-wingers ran out there and said, oh, conspiracy. This is obviously a false flag. Who would actually write their motive on a bullet? He must actually be some right-winger that's faking this whole thing. That's why he shot the detainees instead of the agents, because actually he was really some MAGA supporter. Same playbook, same exact playbook that Jimmy Kimmel put out. These guys are running the Jimmy Kimmel playbook because they know that it works. Jimmy Kimmel taught them how to cover for the terrorists, and they are following suit. The entire left wing has learned now that this is how you manufacture the narrative before anything else happens, so the left believes that it's actually secretly violent right-wingers who are doing all of this. Of course, they ignore the fact that there have been plenty of examples of these radical leftist killers writing their intentions, their entire manifestos onto their weapons or their bullets. Of course, we had the "Catch This Fascist" that was written on the bullet that was shot at Charlie Kirk. We had the trans shooter who killed multiple children while they were praying at a Catholic school. Remember, this was just a few weeks ago, and they had written their motivation onto the weapon, onto the magazine that was firing the bullets. This is a well-established pattern. This is the ritual that progressives go through when they murder conservatives. Yes, we now have conservatives murdered by leftists so often that there's actually a ritual that the leftists observe when they're about to murder you. And instead of acknowledging that fact, guys like Jimmy Kimmel have turned this into something that become a conspiracy theory that can be spread throughout the internet. So leftists believe that it's all right-wingers who are actually doing the violence. This is an insidious plan to destroy our understanding of a shared morality in the United States, a shared reality in the United States. But why wouldn't they? What cost have they paid? What, Jimmy Kimmel got a 3-day paid vacation? Nothing. It costs them nothing, and he's back on the air, prepared to lie and cover again, and the leftists feel nothing. They don't feel bad about that. They think it's a victory. They think they defeated fascism by putting a man on stage yet again who will get more people killed through his lies and has set a precedent that now all of his left-wing celebrity friends will follow to make sure that they can cover for leftist terrorism. Every parent knows what happens if you don't punish bad behavior. It repeats and often escalates. The same holds true in politics. When the left sees it can assault conservative speakers, burn cities, threaten opponents, shoot presidents, assassinate leaders, and face no serious consequence, it learns the very obvious lesson: violence works. The right, paralyzed by fear of bad press, has given the left a free pass. That timidity has only encouraged more bloodshed. Now Trump has signed an executive order declaring Antifa a terrorist organization. J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller have pledged to dismantle the networks funding leftist extremism. That's overdue, but it is necessary. If justice is not swift and severe, the killings will continue, because the killers believe that they are entitled to keep winning. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time to do so. If you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, make sure to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform, and when you do, leave a rating or review. It really helps with the algorithm magic. The show just keeps growing and growing on the podcast platforms. Thank you so much for that. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Gab or Substack or Instagram, if you'd like to watch these videos on Rumble or Odyssey, the links to do all of that are down below in the description. And of course, if you'd like to watch any of these episodes and read any of my columns, you can head over to The Blaze. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.